What's good, IB Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, and a little bit of, we'll call it IB Nation After Dark, even though it's summertime. It doesn't get dark for like 3 or 4 hours. But we are here to talk about the commitment of safety Nick Reddish to the 26 class. And gentlemen, it is obviously myself. I'm Vince D'Addario. I got Sean Davis with me. And I've got Trevor Trowbridge. Wow, I'm gonna spit that one out. And the three of us are gonna break this thing down. This is another. I think it's the 26th. Does that sound right? The 26th member of this class, and the 10th defensive player, and the 5th secondary recruit in this class, gentlemen. So it's Nick Reddish. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. From Charlotte, North Carolina, Independence High School. He's a consensus 3-star. Rivals has him ranked as the number 17 safety in the country and number 23 player out of North Carolina. There's no Irish breakdown grade, and we'll get to that in just a second as to why that is. But it kind of goes to the fact that, IB takes their time and make sure that there's enough film out there to make an accurate ranking, and we don't have that yet. But we'll get to it, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, guys. But again, the 5th secondary recruit in this class, guys, and this one, Sean, has a very interesting backstory to the entire thing and why they ended up with Nick in this class. Yeah. And, it kind of goes along with the Joey O'Brien commitment, and then this one comes as well. But I'll let you kind of talk about his backstory.
The backstory is very interesting, especially when you look at the way he broke down the 4 finalists, and I'll get to that towards the end of the backstory. But you're talking about Mike Mickens falling in love with this young man, of course, because of the injury. He didn't have junior film, didn't play his junior year, but you look at his sophomore film, you understand why Mike Mickens fell in love with this young man. And I'm sure we'll talk about those attributes when we break down the film. But then you're talking about a young man that has been on campus 4 times, 3 unofficially, 1 time officially in April. And that was kind of different than everybody else. His official visit coming April the 4th. Everyone else that pretty much was locked into the defensive class visited during that big weekend on June the 13th. And so when you talk about his recruitment and backstory, it really comes down to Mike Mickens staying on him, getting on this kid early, making him feel like he was a priority for Mike Mickens. And then after he built the relationship, the injury comes and he stays on him. And he mentioned that Wisconsin was the other school that was on him early that stayed with him through the injury as well. So that's just the backstory in the relationship and the desire for Mike Mickens to add him to the class, because a lot of people, you look at recruiting rankings and you look at the other kids that have signed defensively, like you said, Vince, 5 defensive backs in this class already. So you're looking at the others from a ranking standpoint, you might say, oh man, what does Mike Mickens really see? And, you just have to do your due diligence like Mike Mickens does. And anytime Mike Mickens is locked in on the kid, you just go with it, because he sees something. And they continue to recruit him hard to get him on campus in April. He said it in his commitment that after he visited officially, he called the staff a week later and let them know that Notre Dame was the place for him. And he talked about it. The other schools are recruiting him up until yesterday, as he mentioned during his commitment video or commitment ceremony. So that's really much the backstory. It was something that I believe, just listening to him and talking to the people close to him and sharing information with Brian throughout this entire, and the sources that he had within the program, it was pretty clear that this young man had a very difficult decision. And what I mean by that, and I think he explained it quite well, Virginia Tech, very familiar with his family. His brothers play for Virginia Tech. I mean, who wouldn't want the opportunity to play with their brothers? Those are the guys he looked up to. He spoke about that. They were his mentors. And then you take Wisconsin, who was another school that got on him early. And he stated himself that that was probably the best relationship he had with a coach. at Wisconsin, and he had a lot of love for them. And then you talk about Kirk Cinetti in Indiana, a program that's turning around. He talked about the ability to go in early and be able to play early at Indiana. So he had 4 different options. They were all viable options for different reasons, but ultimately, I think it came down to Mike Mickens and the relationship with Mike Mickens, the relationship with the rest of the defensive coaching staff, head coach Marcus Freeman, and like we always hear, just what Notre Dame gives you as a football program, being able to give you the network, giving you get that education, and then being able to play high level D1 college football with an opportunity to possibly win a national championship. And the young man just couldn't pass that up. So ultimately, Notre Dame, once again, we're hearing that they're doing the right thing. A lot of people thought that the transition from the previous staff to this staff, that maybe Notre Dame should go away from putting that academic standard out in front and what it adds to a young man when he comes in. But Notre Dame is leaning into it very hard and is paying dividends on the recruiting trail once they see the winning on the field to match it. I think that's something that's helped out a little bit with the pitch having a stronger pull, is that now they're actually seeing Notre Dame playing high-level football to match the high-level education. And that's really what's making the difference for a lot of these kids with that pitch that has been always at the forefront for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail.
And Trevor, I want to kick this to you because I know there's some more details you probably want to get in there. But the biggest thing I think with this commitment and this recruitment is that Mike Mickens pushed hard for Nick Reddish, and there's not any junior film, right? We're going to watch the sophomore film here in a little bit with the knee injury and everything that took place. There's not a lot of junior film, but Mike Mickens saw something in Nick Reddish that he wanted on his roster, that he wanted in his room. And look, at this point in Mike Mickens' career, if Mike Mickens is pushing for a guy and you're Marcus Freeman, you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Yep. Okay. We're going to get this guy then. I mean, you trust the evaluation that Mike Mickens has on these guys.
Yeah. Look, Mike Mickens is now up in the upper echelon of the coaches like the Harry Heedstans of the world. If Harry Heedstand said he wants an offensive lineman, you just kind of tip your cap and say, okay, Harry, go to work, because we trust your evaluation of who you're going to bring in here. I mean, matter of fact, look, Mike Mickens kind of earned that trust from Marcus Freeman back in their days at Cincinnati. Marcus Freeman was very vocal about, hey, look, I wasn't that high on Sauce Gardner. He wasn't that, high up on my radar. And Mike Mickens was adamant, no, he needs to be on this team. He needs to be in the secondary. Fast forward to now, we know what he was at Cincinnati. We know who he is now with the New York Jets. But look, at the end of the day, this is a recruit that Mike Mickens was extremely, extremely high on. The second that I heard that, I didn't need to see junior film. I didn't need to break it down. I'm going to trust what Mike Mickens has to say, and then I'm going to trust what Brian puts out in the class impact and the commitment article that he puts out on the message boards and then out there on social media right now. But this has been a priority target for Notre Dame. And look, it's following the track record of when Notre Dame kind of sinks their teeth into somebody in the recruiting process. They tend, especially with this class, start to bode extremely, extremely well for this Notre Dame recruiting staff. Look, we're talking about a kid that has visited campus 4 times in the last calendar year, and only one of those was the official visit, and that's the June 13th visit that Sean brought up. But we're talking about somebody who's been a very, very high priority on Mike Mickens' list, which is high praise for a class that has Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams and Aiden Pouncey and Chaz Smith. And so, Mike Mickens took a look at him. They think that he projects really well. We're going to get more into this in the class impact, but we're talking about somebody who is a very versatile athlete. He can play multiple positions on the defensive side of the ball. And that's a common theme of a lot of the players that Mike Mickens has been bringing into Notre Dame over the last couple seasons, something that we'll be getting into later in the show as well. But even with the knee injury, Mike Mickens stayed really, really high on this kid. And so this was at the top of the list for him. And it came to fruition today, announced his commitment to the University of Notre Dame. I was thinking about this, watching his commitment video, and I wonder how much, and this is pure speculation, I don't know. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this too. I want to know how much time Nick Reddish spent with Jalen Stroman when he was on his official visit. because he can come at it from a very unique perspective that he was also at Virginia Tech and has been at Notre Dame since January and can give a perspective on what he's seen from both programs. Because I understand the pull to want to go to Virginia Tech. Sean, to your point, your brothers go there. There's somebody that you looked up to. But there's, in the same position room that you're likely going to be in with the same position coaches, now has experience from two programs. I want to know if there was some sort of connection there on campus where, like I said, pure speculation, but I wonder if that played a factor at all. But nonetheless, this is another big pickup for Notre Dame, and it rounds out that secondary class. That was already one of, if not the best secondary class in the country. And this just kind of brings it home because you now have 5 defensive backs that you can put on the field at the same time. And that kind of leads us into what the class impact is of getting a kid like Nick Reddish. You go through and you look at, we talk a lot on this show about where everybody fits together. We talked about it with the offensive line class. We've talked about it before with the defensive line class. The year that Texas A&M signed all those high-end, high-caliber recruits, it's like, yeah, you signed 5 guys to play 2 spots. It's great that their ratings are that high, but you can't play them all at once. You look at this Notre Dame secondary class, and you look at Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams and Chaz Smith and Aiden Pouncey and now Nick Reddish. You can put them all out on the field at the same time because Nick Reddish is somebody that is versatile enough to play multiple positions. They're bringing him in to be a nickel safety, projects really well to the nickel. You'll see that in the film when we pull that up in a little bit. I know that's Vince's favorite part. He's chomping at the bit to get the film. But, you look at the secondary class as a whole and where he fits. He can line up all over the defense. He's a very athletic kid. He's very instinctive, and you're going to see that coming up as well. But Sean, it's a situation where Notre Dame didn't need another safety in the class, but they wanted Nick Reddish. And I think that speaks volumes to how much of a high regard Mike Mickens holds him to. But I think it's also a testament to that young man and how versatile he is on the field.
And I'll be honest, he always stayed at the top of this defensive back want list for Mike Mickens in the 26th class, even when other highly ranked players that they were trying to get chose to go elsewhere. Even when they were bringing those kids in for visits during the spring, they had a couple. Zach Fort came in the same time period, committed to Georgia. They were trying to flip him. And so they weren't bringing him in and then minimizing what this young man meant. No, they were saying, look, we still want Nick Reddish. He's one of the most important gets. And so for this young man to come in April and then immediately after that say, yeah, I'm ready to make this decision. I'm ready to shut it down. I'm kind of shocked. I'm going to be honest, especially the way things are going now. April the 4th, a week later, he's calling the staff saying, yo, I'm ready to come. That's April the 11th. And here we are, sitting almost 3 months later. And this young man had to hold that in and keep it suspenseful. But the impact for me is that I think you heard Tom Lloyd mention it. He is an instant impact special teams player. You just watch him play, you can tell that he's going to find a way to get on the field. Right? Because there's extreme talent. There's a wealth of talent in front of him when he gets here to Notre Dame. But he's going to find a way to get on the field. Special teams. That's just the type of young man he is. And he spoke about it. Like, yo, I'm a family man. I don't go out. I don't do all that partying. I'm about the business. He's just excited. I'm excited to see this young man his senior year because I know he's hungry. Because football was taken away from him. So he's going to be hungry playing in his senior year. So I'm super excited about his impact on his class because I think he is the perfect. You talking about ending a 5-man, think about this symmetry. To end a 5-man wide receiver haul this weekend and then come around and end a 5-man defensive back haul with the 2 players that you got as the 5th, if you want to call them, I'm not ranking them, but they were the last ones to commit. Both explosive players. Maybe not the measurables of some of the other guys in the class, but if you just watch the film and look at their possibility and what they can bring instantly, you definitely see it from Braden Robinson and from Nick Reddish. So I just thought that symmetry was kind of interesting that both five-man hauls at the wide receiver position and the defensive back position, but Nick Reddish is definitely an impactful player, and I don't think he should be overlooked. I know the players that you got in the defensive backfield hall, the other four guys, but I'm telling you, do not overlook, like you said, Trevor, he is the entire five-man hall, signals flexibility, but he is the true, in my opinion, true nature and true core of flexibility when you talk about a player in this class that can play nickel, that can play both safeties, and can be moved around. He's great in space. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We'll get to the film and talk about it. But this kid, when you watch, we're talking about just his sophomore film. You understand what Mike Mickens immediately saw and said, I want this kid. I'm going to stay on him no matter what.
Well, and that's why they went to a five-man class, right? Because the need was 4, but they didn't want to pass on any one of these 5 guys. They weren't willing to move on from any one of these 5 guys, and if all 5 wanted to come, they were going to take them. And this is, I think, also where the expanded scholarship, situation really comes into play in a positive way for Notre Dame. I mean, they added 10 scholarships, and so they have an opportunity to bring in an extra guy. And I don't want to call any of these 5 extra, you know what I mean? But the number of 5 is an extra, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's what I mean by that. And so I don't want to make it sound like one of these guys is a flyer or anything like that. It's just the fact that they needed 4. They took 5 because they have the ability to do so. And Mike Mickens wasn't ready or willing to compromise and cut one of these guys out. It was, I want 5. We're going to recruit 5. And if all 5 want to come, we're going to take them. And so that speaks volumes to who these 5 are to me, based on the fact that Mike Mickens wanted to get them. And in a bigger picture scale, this is the 4th guy from North Carolina. Like, we've talked about the fact that North Carolina is now a priority for Notre Dame in recruiting. Now this is the 4th recruit that you're bringing out of North Carolina in one class, and they're all on the defensive side of the football, which I think is interesting too. So very clear that North Carolina is a point of emphasis for Notre Dame. They made that point, bringing in 4 guys in the same class, fellas. And this is it's a nice round out to this secondary class. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, we're going to jump into the film in here in just a minute. But Nick Reddish was a guy who always had Notre Dame high on his list. He's been on campus 4 times in the last year, 3 on his own dime. And then obviously his official visit was technically after he silently committed to Notre Dame, but it was in June, just last month. And now he officially commits to Notre Dame. So, this is one that we may have seen coming, but at the same time, I'm very interested, fellas, and you can expound on this if you want to, but I'm very interested to see what his senior film is going to look like, because as I mentioned in the open, Brian hasn't given a grade. He hasn't done an Irish breakdown grade, an IB grade. There's no upside grade. There's nothing, because there's only sophomore film to look at. He was out pretty much all of junior year, and there's just not a lot of game film to watch. There's not a lot of highlight film to watch. There's just not a lot out there. And so we're not going to put out an artificial grade with an incomplete amount of information. And so once that senior film starts to roll out, once we get a few game films to watch, that kind of thing, then you're going to see IB come out with a grade. And I would venture to guess that it's going to climb, and he's probably not going to be a 3-star once things all get shaken out. And you guys will see what we're talking about when we throw the film on. My guess is that he is going to project at a higher level than a 3-star, probably amongst all the other services as well, because they don't have junior film to watch either. They only have the sophomore film. And so once that senior film starts to roll out and they start to reanalyze and all of those different things, I say reanalyze for the other system or the other rankings, but analyze in the first place for IB, I think you're going to see you're going to see Nick as a higher than a 3-star, guys.
And Nick, just to piggyback on what you just said, I'm sure that was a conversation that was had with Lauren Lando. Notre Dame is probably not connected to his rehab. I know when he visited in November, he spoke about, just starting the rehab and not rushing the rehab and just wanting to get healthy and get back for his senior season. And so in doing so, I'm sure there were conversations with Mike Mickens and the coaching staff and Lauren Lando to say, yo, this injury, what do you project when we get him, what can we do to make sure that his speed is the same? And I'm sure they'll watch, like you said, they'll watch his senior film and stay committed. And I'm sure a lot of fans might say, well, man, what about the Daniel Anderson situation, right? It was a kid that committed, was coming off an injury, and then all of a sudden, him and Notre Dame part ways. I don't think this situation is similar to that situation, and I'll just leave it at that. So I don't think this is a situation where you have to worry about Notre Dame just kind of like souring on Nick Reddish. I think Mike Mickens, like we said, has pegged this young man, has always kept him at the top of his list of players that he wanted in this class. And so I think that conversation Vince was had, even after the injury, and he was visiting, and the decision was made to continue to recruit him as hard as Mike Mickens did. So all of that stuff is kind of like sealed. Like they're just waiting. Now they just want to get him on campus, and he'll go through the normal process of anyone. Getting stronger, strengthening his body, adding some weight, and then we'll see, what type of player he ends up becoming.
All right, fellas, are you ready to jump into a little bit of film here?
Always.
All right, let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can make this happen. Usually this is Brian's level of expertise. Let's see if I can go full screen here and it won't mess things up. All right, I think I can. Look at this. Oh my goodness. All right, so I will man the controls here. You guys kind of walk us through what you see, and if you want me to go back, I can do that. But you can kind of watch the speed right here.
I mean, the first thing you're going to see about him is he's a very instinctive football player. Sat down, he didn't jump the route too early, broke on the ball extremely fast. You see the athleticism pop out, but that's a very smart football player. Didn't jump the route too early, kept his hands on the back hip of the tight end, wasn't too physical with tight end, slot receiver, whichever one that is, made a perfect timed jump on the football. And then to Vince's point, you see the long speed. And keep in mind, guys, this is his sophomore film.
Right.
Sophomore film. But you see it. Read, react, plant, sticks the back foot in the ground, and he flies downhill. The second that he sees the toss play to the running back, sticks, reads it, sticks the back foot in the ground, and goes.
Not afraid to lay the wood, that's for sure. Holy cow.
No, he's a more than apt tackler. I mean, we're talking about a kid that, in his sophomore year, he had 95 tackles. 95 tackles. But to your point, you see the ball skills. You go back and you look at what he did. He had 10 passes defended, and he also had 4 interceptions as well. So he's not just the hard-hitting safety that comes down and fills the alley, which some people can kind of assume when you go and look at the measurables, right? Like you go and you look at somebody who's 5'11", 185 pounds, going into his senior year of high school, didn't play much his junior year due to an injury, flies downhill, and he is not afraid to lay the lumber. Not afraid to lay the lumber. But that's another play where he goes, he's drifting back with that deep out route, and then he reads the underneath route. He sits on it and he waits, eyes stay in the backfield, goes and makes a big play.
For me, Trev, when I watch his film, the first thing he reminds me of, and look, I just use this comp because of the type of player. Not to say he's going to be this guy, because I already know the chat is going to go crazy when I say this name. But there are certain players. You pointed out all of his great traits, his quickness, as smooth as he is to transition from back pedal to coming down immediately. But this kid, whether it's forced fumbles, whether it's interceptions, whether it's passes defended, this young man has a knack for making plays and being around the ball. You talked about it. He's very instinctive. And when you have a player that just has a knack for creating some type of turnover or creating some type of pass breakup or just making a bone-jarring tackle in the backfield, you go get those players. Forget the physical attributes we're looking at, like the long speed you talk about, the quickness of transition. It's just something about him. It's almost like the same thing you would say. How in the world is Dennis Rodman coming up with all these rebounds? He just has a knack for knowing where the ball is going to be. And this young man is just like that. The safety position, and like you said, he has the ability to play the deep third and cover it and pick it off. And then he can go to the strong safety position, come down into the box and deliver the blow in the run game. When you have a versatile kid like that, you're really getting a good player. You're really getting a good player. And I think he's more athletic than people gave him credit for because, like you said, they didn't see that maturation until his junior year, and they forget what he was able to do his sophomore year. And now I think he's going to explode on the scene, something that you asked, Vince. I think he's going to explode on the scene this year. I really do. I think he's going to explode on the scene nationally, put up some great stats and become a 4-star and rise in the rankings because he's that good. And he has catch-up speed. We've seen people, man, you see him tracking guys down on multiple highlights. He's just a big-time get. He's a big-time get.
I mean,
go ahead.
You're good, man. He's just a very fluid athlete.
Yeah.
You know, there was a play where quarterback kept it backside and he was reading front side and he flips his hips. Smooth transition, doesn't get his feet twisted up, and he goes, takes a great angle on the football, and he's able to make the stop and prevent an overly big play from happening. But look, you can see the versatility with him on film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've seen him play single high. You've seen him play down in the slot. You see him play too high. But he's always around the football, to your point. But again, that's another play. Good job of flipping your hips, tracking the ball well, staying with the receiver. But he comes down initially, sees the tight end on a wheel route, flips his hips, and he's running with him stride for stride.
Yeah.
I mean, this is somebody that is very athletic, a very fluid athlete. But he's somebody that, again, you see the versatility of all the different spots that he can play on the defense.
Yeah.
You understand why Mike Mickens is so high on him because it fits the bill of everybody else in the class. Everybody else in this defensive backs class has the ability to play multiple positions on defense. And you look at somebody like Nick Reddish, and he fits that bill too.
Yeah. How often do you see a kid put special teams coverage on his highlight film? This is him coming down on the kickoff team and just planting the kid like a petunia. I mean, I just love the fact that he is obviously fast. He's not afraid to stick his nose in. He's physical. And he, like you said, he plays all over the field. And I think that was one of the things that Brian put into his class impact story is that he's versatile. You can put him anywhere. You can put him in the box. You can put him at safety. You can put him at nickel. You can put him all over. And he's going to produce for you because I think he's got a really good feel for the game. Even as a sophomore on this film, he's got a really good feel for the game. He peels off of guys. He plays zone very well. He's obviously fast enough to play man. I think he understands the game as a sophomore, which is why I'm even more excited to see his film as a senior to see how he has gained his football IQ and then obviously also using his matured body in the same respect. So look at this, multiple kickoff highlights. Look at this. I love it.
I was just about to say, Vince.
That's why I said as soon as he's going to have special teams value from the first day. The first day he gets on campus. First day. Let me tell you something. Offensively or defensively, we have heard or watched film on a lot of young men in this 2026 class. And one thing that is consistent is spatial awareness. Mm-hmm. How many times defensively over the years, Vince, have we worried about Notre Dame defenders out in space?
Right.
Being able to feel comfortable, get guys on the ground, missing tackles, turning a 2-yard negative play into a 7-yard gain or a 10-yard gain. We talked about that for years. And now they're answering that in spades. In recruiting classes and stacking players that are very comfortable defensively in space. And that just lets you know, I think, their mindset of where this defense that is already top 5, where they see it getting better and how they see it getting more impactful, just from a depth standpoint, skill standpoint, speed standpoint, just fantastic. And like I said, I didn't mention the name, but the special teams tape that we watched added to it. Look, this is how Ed Reed played in Miami. He played nickel, Then he got moved to safety. He was instinctive. He had great special teams value, and he had speed, long speed. I'm not saying he's the next Ed Reed, but this is the type of film, if you go watch him in high school, this is the type of things that he was doing as well, and the versatility he showed in the defensive backfield, and the knack for creating turnovers and always being around the ball. He's just that type of kid. So, without saying that he is the next Ed Reed, I think that's a player whose game he reminds you of at the high school level. And you see like a little residue to say, man, he might have the ability to improve and get to this point and be that impactful once he gets to Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, in one of their most recent commitments, Brandon Logan, I think they have a lot of similarities. They have very similar body types. They have very similar playing styles. But the difference is Brandon Logan was still learning how to be a football player. I mean, he was very young in his maturation of that journey of becoming a football player. But you guys know how the saying goes, clarity equals velocity. And we're seeing that out of Nick Reddish as a sophomore. He has a very good feel for the game. He lets his traits take over because he's able to read and react. He's a very, very, very fluid athlete. He's a very sudden athlete. Once he makes the decision to go, he goes. And that's really, really exciting to see out of somebody that young in high school. I will be very interested to see will you still have that same level of explosiveness coming back from the knee injury? I'm sure that's a pretty obvious, like kind of a no duh type thing. It's something that you're always going to be paying attention to with anybody coming off of an injury. But his instincts, he's a very well-coached kid. He's rarely ever out of position. If you go, like when we were going through and watching film, he never found himself in a bad spot to where he had to overcome something athletically. He played within the defense, which allowed his athletic ability to take over. That's why he was able to blow up so many plays. It's an exciting player to watch, man. Really exciting.
All right, so this is normally where we talk about what's next for Notre Dame, and we will talk about that for about 37 seconds about what's next for the Irish, and then we're going to have kind of a different conversation than we normally do. Obviously centered around recruiting, but we're going to talk about defensive back recruiting specifically over the last few classes and just how elite it has been, really going all the way back to the 23 class. And so we are going to talk about that. Before we do, let's officially talk about what's next, Sean, and what's next for Notre Dame in the 26 class, because it's not much. So go ahead.
There's one left, July 26th. Elijah Golden, who would put a nice bow on that defensive line haul for Coach Al Washington, and began to once again change the narrative in that positional room from a recruiting standpoint, which is probably a little bit behind what we're seeing here with the addition of Nick Reddish, which is just the continuing of what Mike Mickens continues to do year after year. He continues to elevate defensive back recruiting. And so finishing it off, Elijah Golden is left, and then he would be the 27th commitment of the class if he does commit. And like we said, he would give a defensive line class that can literally be on the field at the same time. Once again, versatility within a position room is really the statement for this entire class. Like the wide receiver class is like that. The running backs complement each other. The offensive line can all play it.
Six of those guys.
Six of those guys, right? The defensive line would be that. They only had two linebackers, but then the defensive backfield, they can all be on the field at the same time. So just the versatility, but we continue to harp on that. It's amazing how versatile this class is at the same time being as highly ranked and talented as they are as well. And so moving on from Elijah Golden to just the impact of, like I said, how in the world is Mike Mickens elevating the recruiting at defensive back year after year? I mean, heck, he got Benjamin Morrison, and then you come with Christian Gray and Leonard Moore, and now he's just adding those. He will get one or two of those guys in his early classes. But now you look at this haul, and you can really look at the class and say, man, Joey O'Brien, Nick Reddish, Aiden Pouncey, Kari Adams. It's like, good grief. And then we still haven't seen Brandon Logan, when he gets to campus, right? Tay, what is he going to do? He was raved about before he got injured. They were raving about him in fall camp, and now they're still raving about him this spring. I'm looking forward to seeing him in fall camp, Bronte Johnson. So Mike Mickens, in my opinion, in 3 to 4 years, Vince, and you know this, the defensive back recruiting and performance was questionable. Pass defense has been questionable in Notre Dame for a while. You would get a spark or a combination here or there, where
Sure.
you get 1 or 2 guys working together and you say, okay, right? But just overall depth was never really there. You saw that in the semifinal game against Clemson. As soon as they lost their top two of their top guys, Clemson went to work in the passing game. So they didn't have the quality depth. Just last year, Christian Gray's not starting this week. Okay, throw that freshman named Leonard Moore in there. Yeah, just throw him in there. Impact play, first drive, and then, he's guarding one of the most explosive players for Louisville and their wide receiver core for the entire game, and shows well. And then the rest is history with his freshman year. So it just shows how he's raised the level of recruiting to be able to build quality depth to where there is really no drop-off. I'm sorry. And I'm muting myself. I don't know how I muted myself, but I'm talking and I'm muted myself. That's wild. But to be honest, this is the question. Like, you sit and say to yourself, if Benjamin Morrison didn't get injured and played the entire season, Leonard Moore would have been sitting on the bench. Like, that talent, that physically gifted young man probably would have been getting in, maybe getting 15, 20 snaps a game, but he would not have been a starter. And so it begs the question, okay, the other guys that didn't get in, what? Because Kennedy Urlacher got in and flashed when he played, and he decided, I'm cutting bait. Let me go find somewhere where I can get up this depth chart, because I don't see the capabilities of doing that. That kind of just signals what might be coming from a depth standpoint. And you pointed out, Vince, what is special teams and gunners on punt coverage? What is this about to start looking like with the elevation of talent in the defensive backfield?
I'm telling you, if there's one more person on the staff that's more excited than Mike Mickens, it might be Marty Biaggi. Like, honestly, I mean, you talk about you're just filling up the special teams room full of just freaky, long, athletic kids that, for whatever reason, all like to take souls when they tackle people. It is what it is. But to your point, though, Sean, about depth, doesn't that speak a little bit to the kids that are coming in this class? They're looking at these rooms. They know, look, since 2023, Notre Dame has brought in 13 defensive backs. 11 of them are still there. 11. And they just signed their third class in a row of 5 straight people. I mean, that is unparalleled. I mean, you listen to this. I mean, in 23, they bring in Christian Gray, Micah Bell, who's no longer there, and Adon Schuler. 2024, they bring in Bronte Johnson, Leonard Moore, Carson Hobbs, Tabron Benny Powell, Kennedy Urlacher. Kennedy Urlacher has since transferred. Obviously, all the 25 kids are still there. Jadon Blair, Cree Thomas, Ethan Long, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Brandon Logan. And now you just signed you have another committed class of 5 men of Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, Aiden Pouncey, Chas Smith, and Nick Reddish. They see the rooms that are in front of them. They know what they're walking into. But I think that's a testament, one, to the players that they're signing in this class to say, hey, we see what's in front of us. And odds are we know what's going to be coming behind us in 2027. They haven't started recruiting that position now. I mean, as far as what's next, also, now they can focus their attention on the 2027 class. But this is what it looks like to continually stack classes at a very high level. But you go and you look, and I mean, there's a chance that some of these kids might not be making their impact until 27, 28, shoot, even 29, depending on the year, if they're able to keep the room together. But that's not because, we just got some quality depth pieces and we just kind of have to wait until they're juniors to get in the starting lineup. We've seen that before in South Bend. We've seen those recruiting classes that are just kind of like, yeah, they're not bad. They're quality football players. And then once their junior, senior year hits, they're just in the starting lineup because they had just been there the longest. But we're talking about, a safety room. Then in a couple years will be, I mean, we're talking about a safety room that's going to have Bronte Johnson and Jadon Blair and Ethan Long and Joey O'Brien and Aiden Pouncey and Nick Reddish. And I mean, it's absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded. And like I said, when Mike Mickens really made the push back in Cincinnati to get Kobe Bryant and Sauce Gardner together in the same defensive backfield, Mike Mickens has stuck to the identity of very long, very rangy, very athletic cornerbacks. I mean, you look at what Notre Dame's safety room was heading into this season, and Adon Schuler ends up being the shortest guy at 6 foot tall. You got 6'4" Luke Talich, 6'5" Jadon Blair, 6'3" Ethan Long, 6'2" to 6'3" Bronte Johnson, 6'1", 6'2" Tabron Benny Powell. And apparently that wasn't good enough because then they went out and signed 6'3" Aiden Pouncey and 6'4" to 6'5" Joey O'Brien. I mean, he is recruiting with an identity in South Bend, and it's working, man. I mean, Mike Mickens has been on an absolute tear. But again, I can't emphasize enough. I think it is more of a testament to the young men that are coming into this class. We got a buy, sell, hold about, earlier this week, is now the negative recruiting spin on Notre Dame going to be, oh, you don't want to go to that school, you're not going to play for 2 to 3 years. When you look at a room like Mike Mickens' secondary, I understand some of the validity in that conversation. But you just look at the talent that they're bringing in, and they're setting themselves up to where, one, their secondary will always be fresh with just being able to throw waves and waves of guys at you. But also, it's going to breed what Marcus Freeman loves to do in practice, and that is intense competition. In the winter, in the spring, in the summer, and all throughout fall camp. And I can't wait to watch it go down. But Mike Mickens has been on an absolute tear, man.
To talk about, once again, pointing back to the history that had existed before Mike Mickens, any key injury in the secondary, Notre Dame was in trouble. And you can go to that Louisville game that had one of the most explosive offensive units. And you already know the quality play caller and head coach that Brom is. Injury before the game, injury during the game, a couple of injuries. Rod Hurd comes in. He plays outside a couple of snaps. Then he goes to the nickel. Jordan Clark is playing outside, and he's playing at the nickel. Just the versatility that group was able to show with the injuries before the game and during the game, to be able to come up and make. Rod Hurd made some big plays in that Louisville game. Jordan Clark played well. Then Leonard Moore comes in as a true freshman and holds his own. And they're going to get better. They're even deeper this year. A little bit younger, but more deeper, right? Their top 2 guys, hey, plenty of game experience. The guys behind them, not so much. But as far as talent and drop off, once they take the field, I think we all believe Mike Mickens is going to have them ready. He had Leonard Moore ready. He had Benjamin Morrison ready when it was his time to take over in the middle of the season. He gets his players ready to play immediately. And I think that's the counter to what you just talked about, the question in buy, sell, hold. How do you counter that? That's not a place you want to go play because you're probably not going to get a chance to play. Well, no. You're going to play, and we're going to get you ready to play early. You're going to be ready to play the first time you take the field. You're going to be ready to go out there and play. That's what we do here. And they've shown that year after year that whatever freshman steps on the field, Benjamin Morrison, the freshman, impact. Leonard Moore, impact.
Christian
Heck,
Gray.
you go back to Cam Hart coming over, the first year coming over from offense, impact. Mike Mickens knows how to get his guys ready when he gets his hands on them. And that, for me, Trev, that's the counter from Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens. Like, yeah, all right. You know one thing, we're going to get you ready to play, and you're going to get the opportunity to play.
Well, and, I mean, Nick Reddish projects as a really good nickel player. I mean, so now in back-to-back classes in Dallas Golden and now Nick Reddish, You have two players that are natural nickel players. I mean, it's almost like Mike Mickens took that as a challenge. He was like, oh, okay, I had to go to the portal 3 years in a row to get me a nickel back corner. All right, I'm going to go get me some. And then in back-to-back classes, you went and surpassed what those expectations were, to your point, Sean. And so, yeah, man, I mean, they'll be ready to play at a young age. I mean, Christian Gray was ready to go as a true freshman when we had to step up and finish the game against Pitt. And then just for fun, he had a one-handed interception in the first game. He played over 35 snaps. I mean, but even Leonard Moore, he stepped into the starting lineup against Louisville, but outside of Northern Illinois, he played and rotated in every game up until that outside of Northern Illinois. Vince, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time, man.
Oh, it's a very exciting time. And this is a nice bow to put on the defensive backfield. And, of course, Notre Dame still has one more fish out there that they are hoping to grab. And we will find out in a couple of weeks whether they are able to nab that fish or not. And we'll be around. If you stick with Irish Breakdown, both on the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com, over at irishbreakdown.com, and, of course, on the shows, we will let you know what we're thinking about where Notre Dame stands with the next and final domino to fall in the 2026 class. But today we are celebrating the fact that 26 safety Nick Reddish has committed to Notre Dame. He's a safety / nickel. His versatility is what stands out. And this is going to be a fun one to follow. His senior year is going to be a fun one to follow. Not that all of the other 25 recruits in the 26th class aren't going to be fun to follow their senior year, but I think this one kind of shines the brightest because he didn't have a junior year. And so what is that senior year going to look like for Nick? And we're all looking forward to checking that one out. So Nick Reddish commits to Notre Dame, the 26th commitment in the 2026 class. Of course, Notre Dame is hoping for 27 when it is all said and done. But Nick is the 26th overall, the 10th on defense, the 5th in the defensive backfield, and the 4th from North Carolina. So a lot of good things continuing to happen for Notre Dame in this cycle. We're about ready to turn the page to the 27 cycle, guys. So give us a couple of weeks and we'll see what happens with this final domino. But it's crazy to think that we're going to start talking 27 class here real soon. So thanks, boys, for jumping on tonight. Talk about Nick Reddish committing to Notre Dame. And, of course, we will be back. It is Friday right now, so we'll be back on Monday for our normal 1 o'clock show. And then the 5 o'clock show, the IB Nation Sports Talk, will have a big announcement. So you're going to want to check that out. We will be back. We've been teasing you guys for a couple of weeks now, but the big announcement is coming on Monday night. So you're going to want to check that out as well. So for Trevor and Sean, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you guys next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Enjoy it.